Welcome to another deep dive, everybody. This time we're going to be talking all about agile testing.
Agile testing. Yeah.
It's something that we've gotten a lot of emails about.
Oh, really?
Yeah, people seem to be really interested in kind of getting this figured out.
Yeah.
You know, especially because traditional software testing methods, they just don't really work in the fast-paced world of agile development.
Right.
So we're going to try to give you a much better understanding by the end of this deep dive of just how agile testing works and how you can adapt and maybe even impress some people.
Right. Sounds good.
In your next meeting or something like that.
That's right. Yeah. You've got to stay ahead of the curve. And it seems like agile testing is really one of those things you need to know.
Absolutely. Yeah.
To succeed in this world.
So I think a lot of folks, when they hear agile testing, they maybe think it's kind of a buzzword or something, right?
You hear it all the time.
But
yeah.
Can you help us kind of break down what it actually means in a practical sense?
Right.
What is agile testing?
Well, I think, it's definitely more than just a trendy phrase.
Right.
It really is a completely different way of thinking about quality.
Okay.
In software development.
Okay.
So instead of testing being a separate phase that happens like at the end.
Right.
It's integrated throughout the whole entire development process.
So how do we avoid getting stuck in that old way of thinking?
I think you need to shift your mindset.
Okay.
From testing for defects to building quality in.
Okay.
So think of it this way.
Okay.
Traditional testing is like trying to catch all the typos in a book.
Right.
After it's already been printed.
Gotcha.
Agile testing is like having an editor working alongside the author.
Yeah.
Catching those errors as they're being made.
So you're kind of nipping those problems in the bud before they
preventing those issues.
Become bigger issues later on.
From piling up and becoming a bigger problem later on.
Yeah. Okay. I like that. So much more proactive.
Yeah, exactly. And there are actually 5 core principles that underpin agile testing.
That's okay.
And they are continuous testing, collaboration, adapting to change, customer focus, and automation.
Okay, so 5 pillars of agile testing.
Exactly.
Continuous testing, collaboration, adapting to change, customer focus, and automation.
Yes.
We're going to unpack all of these in detail.
Right.
But first up, continuous testing. We've touched on it a little bit already.
Right.
But what does it really mean for teams on a day-to-day basis?
Well, it means testing is woven into every stage of the development process.
Okay.
So from the moment a line of code is written to the final release test, testing is happening concurrently.
Okay.
So for developers, this means integrating tools that automatically run tests as they code.
Right.
For testers, it means designing tests early on.
Gotcha.
And being involved throughout the entire sprint.
I can imagine that is a pretty big cultural shift for some teams.
You're absolutely right.
Especially folks that are maybe used to having these clear boundaries between development and testing.
Yeah. And one thing that can help with that is breaking down those silos and creating cross-functional teams where developers and testers work side by side.
So you're talking about creating a more collaborative environment where everyone's kind of responsible for quality.
Exactly. Which brings us to our next principle.
Okay.
Collaboration.
Okay.
Agile testing thrives on open communication and teamwork.
Right.
So it's not just the tester's job to ensure quality.
Yeah.
It's everyone's responsibility.
So collaboration, that's the magic ingredient to any agile project, right?
It's pretty important, yeah.
But what does that actually look like, in practice? What does collaboration mean in agile testing?
So imagine, a tester, a developer, and a product owner are all gathered around a whiteboard.
Yeah.
Sketching out user stories.
Okay.
Acceptance criteria together.
Right.
They're discussing potential edge cases, brainstorming test scenarios.
Yeah.
Just ensuring that everyone has a shared understanding of what needs to be built and how it will be validated.
Right. So it's really shifting from that us versus them mentality and into a true partnership where everybody's working towards that same goal.
Exactly. And this collaborative spirit is essential for navigating the ever-changing landscape of agile development.
Right.
Which leads us to our next principle.
Okay.
Adapting to change.
The infamous agile requirement changes.
Oh, yeah.
I can imagine that can be a pretty big challenge for testers.
Yeah. It definitely requires a different mindset.
Right. Right.
Testers need to be comfortable with ambiguity.
Okay.
Flexible in their approach.
Right.
And always willing to adjust their plans as needed.
Okay.
It's almost like you're building a ship while you're sailing it.
Yeah.
You know?
That's a good analogy.
Yeah.
But it also sounds a little chaotic.
It can be a little chaotic.
how do you kind of maintain a sense of structure and make sure that you're still delivering quality, even with all of that change happening?
That's where strong communication and frequent feedback loops come into play. So it's about being proactive, anticipating potential changes,
Okay.
and having open conversations with the development team and the product owner throughout the sprint.
All right, so we've covered continuous testing, collaboration, and adapting to change.
Yes.
Next up, customer focus.
Oh.
It seems pretty self-explanatory, but I'm sure there's more to it when it comes to Agile testing.
Yeah, it goes beyond simply making sure that the software meets the specified requirements.
Okay.
It's about understanding the user's needs and pain points.
Right.
And validating that the product actually solves those problems.
Yeah.
And delivers a delightful user experience.
Okay.
You know.
So are we talking about things like usability testing,
Exactly.
where you observe how people actually use the software and get their feedback?
Exactly. And it's not just about usability. It's also about considering factors like accessibility,
Right.
performance, and security.
Right.
How quickly does the application load?
Yeah.
Is it easy to navigate for users with disabilities?
Right.
These are all customer-focused considerations
Yeah.
that should be baked into the testing process.
It's about remembering that you're building software for humans, not just
Thank you.
machines.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay, so last one.
Right.
On our list of these pillars of Agile testing is automation.
Right.
In a fast-paced world, like Agile automation seems like a no-brainer.
Yeah. It's pretty essential.
But where do you even begin with automation when it comes to testing?
Well, I think a good place to start is by identifying repetitive tasks
Okay.
that can be easily automated,
Right.
like regression testing.
Okay.
And by automating these mundane tasks,
Yeah.
you free up testers to focus on more exploratory and creative testing activities.
So it's not about replacing humans with robots. It's about using automation to enhance
Exactly.
your team.
Automation is a tool that can help Agile teams test more efficiently and effectively, but it's not a silver bullet. Human intelligence and intuition are still essential for uncovering those tricky edge cases and ensuring a truly high-quality product.
Right. Okay, so those are our 5 pillars of Agile testing.
Yes.
Continuous testing, elaboration, adapting to change, customer focus, and automation.
You got it.
So these are really good guiding principles, I think.
Right.
But how do they translate into the role of a tester on an Agile team? What does an Agile tester actually do?
That's a good question, and it's a very different role from a traditional tester.
Okay.
So in traditional software development, testers were often seen as gatekeepers,
Okay.
responsible for catching defects at the end of the development cycle.
Yeah, kind of the last line of defense.
Right, exactly. But in Agile, the tester's role is much more collaborative and proactive.
So they're not just finding bugs anymore.
Right, it's much more than that.
Okay.
Agile testers are involved in every stage of development,
Okay.
working side by side with developers and product owners to ensure quality is built in from the beginning.
So they're involved in the whole process from the get-go.
Exactly.
Okay, so what does that actually look like? Like, what are some of the key responsibilities of an Agile tester?
Well, first and foremost, they collaborate closely with developers and product owners
Okay.
to clarify requirements and define acceptance criteria.
Okay.
So they're actively involved in sprint planning,
Gotcha.
helping to determine what can be tested and how.
So they're not just handed a list of features to test at the last minute.
Not at all.
They're actually involved in the planning.
Yeah, they're part of the conversation
Okay.
from the get-go,
Gotcha.
ensuring that everyone has a shared understanding of what needs to be built and how it will be validated.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. So what else is on an Agile tester's to-do list?
Well, testing early and often is another key responsibility.
Okay.
Agile testers don't wait until the end of the sprint to start testing.
Right.
They begin testing during development,
Okay.
providing continuous feedback to the developers.
So it's like those pop quizzes we talked about earlier.
That's a great way to put it.
Just keeping everyone on their toes and making sure that the quality is there throughout the whole process.
Exactly. And of course, automation plays a big role.
Right.
Agile testers are responsible for building and maintaining automated test suites,
Okay.
which helps to speed up testing and provide rapid feedback.
Gotcha. So anything else? So they're collaborating, they're testing early, they're automating like crazy.
One more crucial responsibility is facilitating continuous feedback.
Okay.
So Agile testers are responsible for sharing test results promptly and clearly
Okay.
with the rest of the team.
Yeah.
This helps everyone stay informed about the current state of quality
Right.
and make informed decisions about next steps.
They're kind of like the quality ambassadors, keeping everybody in the loop and making sure that everybody is aware of what's going on.
They play a critical role in ensuring that quality is baked into every step of the Agile process.
This is great stuff. I'm starting to see why Agile testing is so important in today's, fast-paced world of software development.
Yeah, it's really become essential.
And speaking of navigating this fast-paced world,
right,
there's a framework that we should talk about that can help provide some structure to this whole process.
Okay.
The Agile Testing quadrants.
Oh, yes, the quadrants.
Have you ever used these in your work?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The Agile Testing quadrants are like a compass that helps teams orient themselves in the world of testing.
Oh, I like that. A compass. Oh.
Yeah, there are 4 quadrants, each representing a different type of testing.
Okay.
And serving a specific purpose. So each quadrant kind of helps you categorize the different types of tests that you might be performing on a project.
All right, so what's the first quadrant?
Quadrant 1 is all about the internal quality of the code.
Okay.
So we're talking about unit tests, component tests, and anything else that helps ensure that the foundation of the software is solid.
So this is like making sure that the building blocks are strong.
Exactly.
Before you start adding all the fancy features.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay, and these are the tests that developers are usually running pretty frequently, right?
Yes. These are the tests that developers typically write and run very frequently, often as part of their automated build process.
Okay.
So they provide that immediate feedback to catch errors very early on.
Early detection is key.
Always.
Okay, what about quadrant 2?
Quadrant 2 shifts the focus to the business requirements.
Okay.
So these tests ensure that the software actually delivers the functionality that the customer expects.
Right.
And that it aligns with the user stories and acceptance criteria.
So if quadrant 1 is making sure that the engine runs,
yeah.
Quadrant 2 is making sure that the car actually goes where you want it to go.
Perfect analogy.
Okay.
So functional testing, story testing, prototype testing, these all fall under quadrant 2.
Okay.
And it's often a collaborative effort between testers, developers, and product owners.
Right.
To make sure that everyone is on the same page.
There's that collaboration again. It seems like it's
everywhere.
A crucial part of this whole Agile testing world.
Absolutely. All right. And then quadrants 3 and 4 shift our attention to critiquing the product itself.
How?
Not just the individual components or features.
So now we're looking at the bigger picture, how it all comes together to actually create that user experience.
Exactly. So quadrant 3 is all about the user experience. Making sure that the software is not only functional, but also enjoyable and intuitive to use.
Okay.
So usability testing, exploratory testing, anything that involves putting the software in the hands of real users to get their feedback.
This is where you really get to see how the software behaves in the wild, right?
Like a nail on the head.
You can have all these tests, all these automated tests, but actually getting it in front of real people is really where the rubber meets the road.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then quadrant 4?
Quadrant 4 focuses on non-functional aspects.
Okay.
Like performance, security, scalability, reliability.
So making sure that the software can handle the load, can withstand attacks, can grow as needed. All that stuff that's not always visible to the user,
right,
but is really crucial for the long-term success of that product.
Exactly. These tests can get pretty technical.
Oh, I know.
Often require specialized tools and expertise.
This quadrant system is really cool. It's a really good comprehensive framework, I think.
It is.
For thinking about the different types of testing.
Yeah.
But I am curious, do teams aim for like an even distribution across all 4 quadrants?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
The Agile testing quadrants are more of a guide than a rigid rule book.
Right.
So the specific mix of tests will depend on the project.
Okay.
The team's skill set and the risks involved.
So you might have a project where security is like paramount.
Exactly.
But you would naturally focus more on quadrant 4.
Exactly. Or you might be working on a consumer app where user experience is everything.
Right.
So you prioritize quadrant 3 activities.
It's all about adapting that approach to the specific needs of the project, which is a core principle of Agile in general. But I imagine prioritization becomes even more important in an Agile environment where you're working in these short sprints.
Absolutely.
So how do you go about doing that?
Well, you can't test everything all the time.
Right.
So you have to be strategic about where you focus your efforts.
Okay.
One common approach is to use a risk-based testing strategy.
Okay.
So prioritizing tests based on the potential impact of a failure.
So if a particular feature is critical to the success of the product, or if a bug in that area would have a really big impact on users,
Exactly.
spend more time testing that.
Yeah, you allocate more testing resources to it.
Right, okay. So it's all about managing risk and making sure that you're testing the most important things first.
That's a great way to sum it up.
All right, so we've talked about the different types of tests, how to prioritize them, but I'm kind of curious about how all of this fits into the flow of an Agile sprint.
Okay.
Are there specific points where certain quadrants become more relevant?
So while the idea of continuous testing means testing is happening throughout the sprint, certain types of tests do tend to cluster at different stages.
Okay.
For example, during sprint planning, when you're discussing user stories and acceptance criteria, you're already starting to think about quadrant 2 tests.
Okay.
The ones that validate the business requirements.
So you're not just thinking about what you're going to build, you're also thinking about how you're going to test it.
Exactly. And as developers start writing code, they're often writing unit tests alongside their code.
Okay.
Which falls under quadrant 1.
Right.
These tests help to catch errors early on and ensure that the individual components are working as expected.
So it sounds like those quadrant 1 and 2 tests are happening kind of in parallel with development.
That's right.
And providing that constant feedback.
Exactly.
To make sure that things are on track. Okay.
And as the sprint progresses and features become more integrated, you start shifting your focus to quadrant 3 tests.
Okay.
The ones that evaluate the user experience. This often involves getting feedback from stakeholders or even real users.
So it's like a gradual progression through the quadrants as the software matures.
Exactly.
Throughout that sprint.
And then as you approach the end of the sprint and you're preparing for release, you might focus more on quadrant 4 tests.
Okay.
Particularly performance and security testing to ensure that the software is ready for prime time.
So it all kind of builds up.
It does.
To that final release.
It's a very dynamic process.
Yeah, this is so different from that old waterfall model.
It is.
Where testing was often an afterthought.
Yeah, you just kind of threw it over the wall.
Yeah, exactly.
And hoped for the best.
But I do have a question with all this emphasis on testing.
Yeah.
Does Agile development ever actually get done?
That's a good question, and it's a common concern.
Yeah, it seems like you could just get bogged down in testing and never actually ship anything.
That's right. But remember, Agile testing is not about slowing down development.
Okay.
It's about building quality in from the start.
Right.
And ensuring that the software is delivered quickly and with confidence.
So it's not a trade-off.
It doesn't have to be.
Between speed and quality?
No.
It's about finding a way to do both.
Exactly.
Simultaneously.
By integrating testing throughout the development process, Agile teams can catch issues early, prevent them from becoming major problems, and ultimately deliver software that meets the needs of the customer on time and within budget.
That's the dream.
That's the goal.
I'm starting to see how all these pieces fit together, the principles, the practices, these quadrants. It's all about creating this culture of quality and collaboration that allows teams to deliver better software faster.
That's it in a nutshell. And, of course, we can't forget about the role that technology plays in all of this.
Right. The tools.
The tools.
Always a fun topic to explore.
Absolutely.
So what are some of the must-have tools for Agile testers these days?
Well, the specific tools will vary depending on the project.
Right.
But some categories are pretty universal, like test automation tools, API testing tools, test management tools, CI/CD integration tools, and team collaboration tools.
Yeah, it seems like there's a tool for just about everything.
There is.
When it comes to Agile testing. But are there any that stand out to you as being particularly important or game-changing?
I think one area where tools have made a huge impact is test automation.
Okay.
So tools like Selenium and Cypress have made it so much easier to automate those repetitive tests that used to take up so much time.
Right. And then that frees up your testers to focus on other more important things.
Exactly. So when you free up testers from those manual tasks, they can focus on more strategic and exploratory testing, which ultimately leads to a better product.
Right. So it's not about automating for the sake of automation. It's about automating strategically.
It's about finding that sweet spot where automation and human expertise complement each other.
I like that. Okay. So what about API testing tools?
Yeah. API testing tools, those are another area.
What are some of the ones that you like?
Where tools have really come into their own.
Yeah.
So tools like Postman and Rest Assured have become indispensable for modern software development.
And why is API testing so crucial these days?
Well, APIs are the glue that holds so much of our modern software together.
Okay.
Right? They allow different applications and systems to talk to each other.
Right.
So if your APIs aren't working correctly,
right,
it could have a ripple effect across your entire ecosystem.
You got to make sure those connections are solid.
You do. And then there are test management tools.
Okay.
Things like Zephyr and TestRail.
Okay.
These are essential for keeping track of all your test cases, test results, and your overall progress.
So it's like having a command center for your testing efforts.
Exactly. And speaking of command centers, we can't forget about CI/CD integration tools.
Right.
Tools like Jenkins and GitLab CI/CD.
I'm always amazed by how much these tools can automate.
It is pretty amazing.
In the development pipeline.
Exactly. This continuous integration and continuous delivery approach is really at the heart of Agile development.
Yeah. It's all about moving quickly and not sacrificing quality.
Precisely.
Mm. Okay, so we talked about some of the tools of the trade. Are there any kind of best practices that you want to leave folks with when it comes to Agile testing? We've covered a lot of ground.
We have.
But are there any key takeaways that you think are really important?
I think one that we've touched on throughout this whole conversation is the importance of starting testing early and often.
Yes. Early testing often cannot be overstated.
Absolutely. The earlier you start testing, the sooner you can catch those defects and prevent them from becoming bigger problems.
Right. It's much easier to fix a small problem than a big one.
And another best practice that comes to mind is really focusing on customer needs.
Yeah.
It's easy to get caught up in the technical details of testing, but ultimately we're building software for real people.
Right. We're not building it for machines.
Exactly. You need to put yourself in the user's shoes and think about things like usability,
okay,
accessibility, and overall satisfaction.
Right. So it's not just about making sure that the feature works, but making sure that it's a good experience.
Exactly. Is it intuitive to use? Is it performant? Is it secure?
Yeah, all those things matter.
All those things matter.
Okay, so what else? So we've got testing, early testing, often focusing on customer needs.
Well, and we've talked a lot about automation, but I think it's important to remember that automation is a tool.
Right.
Not a replacement for human testers.
Yeah, you still need those human testers.
You do exploratory testing, where testers use their creativity and their intuition to uncover those edge cases and those hidden bugs, is still such an essential part of Agile testing.
So it's about striking that balance.
Exactly.
Between automation and human expertise.
And one final best practice I would say is collaboration.
Okay.
Agile testing is a team sport.
Right.
And it thrives on open communication and shared responsibility.
That seems to be like the theme of the entire episode, really, is that collaboration.
It is the key to success when testers, developers, and product owners are all working together, seamlessly sharing information freely and openly. Everyone benefits.
This has been fantastic. I feel like we've covered so much ground when it comes to Agile testing.
You too.
From those basic principles to how to apply them in the real world, and even some of the tools that are out there that can help teams.
It's been a great conversation.
Succeed. I really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing all this information.
It's been my pleasure.
This has been another episode of The Deep Dive.
The Deep Dive.
We'll catch you all next time.